Victoria Nwosu was 20 years old, but some mornings she felt much older. She stood in the small, smoky kitchen before sunrise, tying the faded wrapper tighter around her waist as she bent over the charcoal stove. Her fingers smelled of pepper, onion, and detergent. Her back ached from the clothes she had washed the night before. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep. The day had not even started properly, yet she already felt tired in her bones. From the inner room came the sharp voice she had grown used to. "Victoria!" a woman shouted. "Are you deaf? Is the tea ready or not?" That voice belonged to Auntie Beatrice Nwosu, the wife of Victoria's uncle. Beatrice was a big-bodied woman with quick eyes and a quicker tongue. She was the kind of woman who always looked annoyed, even when nobody had done anything wrong. Since Victoria came to live in their house after her parents died, Beatrice had treated her less like a niece and more like unpaid labor. Victoria swallowed and answered softly, "It is almost ready, Auntie."
Listen,
"Almost
Victoria,
ready,"
a
Beatrice
visitor is
muttered from
coming. You will
inside.
see him.
"That is how your life is.
Auntie, I don't understand.
Always almost.
You will do as you're told.
Never
This
useful."
is for the family.
Victoria
No,
said
Auntie,
nothing.
please.
She had learned that silence was safer. She stirred the tea and tried not to think about the life she used to have. There was a time when mornings did not begin with insults. There was a time when she woke in her own room, in her parents' house, to the smell of her mother's perfume and the sound of her father humming while reading the newspaper. There was a time when she was only a girl with books, drawing pencils, dreams, and laughter that came easily. Then death entered their home and carried both her parents away within one terrible year. After that, everything changed. The little comfort, the security, the warmth. Everything disappeared so quickly that sometimes Victoria still felt dizzy when she thought about it. Her father's younger brother, Uncle Samson Nwosu, had stepped in during those dark days, speaking in a voice full of concern and family duty. He had told people he would take care of his brother's only child. He had told Victoria not to worry, that she was not alone, that she would stay with him and his wife until things settled. Victoria had believed him then. She had been too broken to think clearly. She now knew that Uncle Samson had not taken her in because of love. He had taken her in because her late parents had left behind something worth taking. Their small savings, their documents, their house, their land papers, her school money. Every single thing that should have secured her future had slowly passed into his hands. At first, he had said it was temporary. Then he had said it was for safekeeping. Later, he stopped explaining himself at all. Now, if Victoria asked questions, he looked at her as if she had committed a crime by opening her mouth. She poured the tea into cups and arranged them on a tray. Before she could lift it, a heavy footstep entered the kitchen. Uncle Samson Nwosu was a thick-set man in his early 50s, with a wide face, tired eyes, and a belly that pushed against his singlet. His voice was always too loud, as if he needed the whole world to know he was in charge. He liked to speak as though wisdom lived only in his mouth. In the eyes of outsiders, he was a responsible family man. Inside the house, he was something else. He looked at the tray and frowned. "Is this all?" he asked. Victoria lowered her eyes. "I used the little milk left." He snorted. "Little milk left, little rice left, little oil left. Everything is always finishing in this house because of one extra mouth." Victoria held the tray carefully. She wanted to say, "I am not an extra mouth. I am your brother's daughter." But she said nothing. Samson leaned against the door and looked her over, not as a man looked at family, but as a trader looked at goods that had stayed too long in the shop. "You are still here," he said, 20 years old, still doing school in your head, still carrying book like it will marry you. Victoria's fingers tightened around the tray. "I was in my second year," she said quietly. "If I can go back next term." "Go back?" he cut in with a harsh laugh. "Go back and do what? Study plenty English and come and insult your husband? Which kind of life is that?" He stepped closer. "A girl does not need too much education. What she needs is sense. She needs respect. She needs to know how to cook, wash, kneel, and take care of her husband's home. That is what makes a woman useful." Victoria's throat tightened. She had heard these words so many times that they now lived inside the walls of the house. A woman does not need too much education. A woman belongs in the kitchen. A woman must marry when told. A woman has no need for dreams. Samson gave her one last look and added, "Do not forget, we have visitors this evening." Behave yourself. Her heart skipped. Visitors. That word had become another name for trouble. She lifted the tray and carried it into the sitting room. Auntie Beatrice was already there, tying her scarf and complaining about the dust on the center table. Her eyes fell on Victoria at once. "Why are you walking like that?" Beatrice snapped. "You are not the queen of this house. Put the tray down properly." Victoria obeyed. As she set the cups down, Beatrice clicked her tongue. "See this girl's face, always looking as if the whole world offended her. Are we the ones that killed your parents?" The words hit hard, even after all this time. Victoria straightened slowly. "No, Auntie." "Then stop carrying sorrow like a crown," Beatrice said. "A young girl should be grateful when she still has family to house and feed her." Victoria looked at her. For 1 second, real anger rose in her chest. Feed her? House her? This same house where she swept every corner, washed every cloth, cooked every meal, fetched water, cleaned plates, ran errands, and slept like a stranger? But she kept the anger buried. A girl who depended on cruel people had to learn how to hide her fire. The morning moved the way it always did. Victoria swept the compound, washed dishes, scrubbed the bathroom, cleaned the bedroom, rinsed clothes, and prepared lunch. By afternoon, her arms were trembling. Beatrice found fault in everything. Samson spent the day moving in and out, making phone calls in a low voice and glancing at Victoria in a way that made her skin crawl. By evening, the truth arrived. Victoria had just finished arranging plates when Beatrice came into the kitchen carrying a folded wrapper and the blouse. "Go and wear this," she said. Victoria turned. "Why?" "Do not ask foolish questions. Visitors are coming." "I heard Uncle say that." Beatrice threw the clothes onto the table. "Then you should know enough to stop questioning me." Victoria did not touch them. Beatrice noticed and narrowed her eyes. "What is it?" "Auntie, who is coming?" Beatrice folded her arms. "A good man." Victoria's stomach turned. "What good man?" "The one who wants to marry you." The kitchen went still. Victoria stared at her. "Marry me?" "Yes," Beatrice said, as if discussing the weather. "Do not act surprised. A girl cannot sit in another person's house forever." Victoria's mouth went dry. "I told Uncle I am not ready for marriage." Beatrice laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Ready? Since when did girls like you start getting ready? When food is ready, you eat. When marriage is ready, you marry." Victoria shook her head slowly. "I do not want it." Beatrice's face hardened at once. "Want," she repeated. "You are talking about want?" She stepped closer until they were almost face to face. "Listen to me well, Victoria. Your uncle has done enough for you. He took you in when nobody wanted your burden. He has fed you, clothed you, kept a roof over your head, and now a respectable man is ready to marry you. Instead of thanking God, you are standing here talking about what you want." Victoria's chest rose and fell. "He is old," she whispered. Beatrice's eyes flashed. "Old men are the ones with money. Poor boys marry for love and leave hunger inside the house." Victoria stared at her, horrified. "How old is he?" Beatrice looked away for 1 second, and that was answer enough. Victoria felt a wave of cold pass through her body. "No," she said, shaking her head. "No, I cannot." Before Beatrice could speak again, Samson entered. "What is the delay?" he asked. Then he looked from one face to the other and understood. "So, she has started." Victoria turned to him, fear and anger mixing in her voice. "Uncle, please do not do this to me." Samson's face changed immediately. Whatever softness he showed outside this house disappeared. "Do not raise your voice at me. I am begging you. And I am telling you to keep quiet." Victoria took 1 step forward. "I want to return to school. I want to finish my studies. My father wanted that for me. My mother wanted that for me." Samson slapped the table so hard the plates shook. "Your father is dead." The words cut through her like a blade. Beatrice looked pleased by the silence that followed. Samson pointed a thick finger at Victoria. "And since your father is dead, I am the one speaking now. In this house, what I say is what stands. That man is coming tonight. He likes you. He is prepared to do the right thing. He will pay well. You will marry him." Victoria's lips parted. Pay well. There it was. Not hidden. not dressed in family language, not covered with fake concern. He will pay well. Her uncle was not arranging a future for her. He was selling her. Tears stung her eyes, but she forced herself not to cry in front of them. "Please," she said again, her voice smaller now. "He is too old for me." Samson shrugged. "A man is a man. He is old enough to be my grandfather." "And what is wrong with that if he can feed you?" Beatrice snapped. Victoria looked from one face to the other and saw no mercy in either of them. She understood then, with a clarity so painful it almost made her dizzy, that these people did not see her as family. Not as a daughter of the house. Not as a young woman with pain and fear and hopes. Only as a problem to be removed. A body to be exchanged. A burden to be turned into money. Something inside her broke. Not loudly. Not with tears. Just a quiet final break. Samson picked up the folded wrapper and pushed it into her hands. "Go and dress well," he said, "and do not disgrace me." Victoria looked down at the clothes, then back at him. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then she turned and walked to the small room she slept in. She shut the door and stood there in the dimness, breathing hard. The room was small and plain, a narrow bed, a plastic chair, a bucket in one corner, a few clothes folded neatly. Her old school bag under the bed, that was all. She sat down slowly. Her hands were shaking. Outside, she could hear Beatrice moving around, preparing for the visitor. Samson coughed, then laughed into his phone. The normal sounds of evening filled the house, but to Victoria they no longer sounded normal. They sounded like a trap closing. She opened her bag and took out the one thing she still kept hidden between old notebooks, a photograph of her parents. Her mother was smiling in it, her head tilted slightly towards her husband. Her father looked serious, but his eyes were warm. Victoria touched their faces with her fingertips. "Mummy," she whispered. Her voice broke. "Daddy." Tears finally came then. Not loud tears, not dramatic tears, just the kind that slid down quietly when the heart could not carry any more pain. "I tried," she whispered. "I tried to endure. I tried to respect them. I tried to be patient." She pressed the photograph to her chest. "I cannot do this." No one answered, of course. But in that silence, something steady rose inside her. Not courage exactly. Maybe desperation. Maybe the final strength that comes when a person has reached the edge and knows there is nothing left to lose. She wiped her face and stood up. The visitor had not arrived yet. There was still time. Her eyes moved around the room. What could she take? Very little. She had no money worth mentioning. Most of what belonged to her had already been swallowed by the house and its greed. She quickly packed her school certificates, one change of clothes, her sketchbook, a pen, a tiny purse with a little money she had saved from the market errands, and the photograph of her parents. Her heart beat so hard she could feel it in her ears. If they caught her, they would never let her out again. She listened at the door. Voices in the sitting room. Beatrice laughing too loudly. Samson giving instructions. Someone had arrived at the compound gate. Victoria froze. It was him. The man. The old man they wanted to hand her over to. A wave of fear almost made her legs weak. Then she heard the deep voice outside, old and heavy, and something in her refused to die quietly. No, she thought. Not like this. Not here. Not in this house. Not while her parents' photograph was still warm in her hand. She moved fast. Instead of going through the sitting room, she opened the back window carefully. It was small, but she had used it before to shake rugs outside. She pushed her bag through first, then climbed after it, her wrapper catching for a second on the rough edge. Her breath almost stopped. She paused. Nobody heard. She dropped down into the dark back space behind the house, grabbed her bag and ran. She did not stop to wear slippers properly. She did not stop to think. She did not stop to plan tomorrow. She only ran. Behind her, the house stood in the fading evening like a place that had swallowed all her tears and still wanted more. Inside that house were the people who had buried her future, stolen her parents' legacy, and decided her life was theirs to sell. But Victoria was gone. For the first time in a long time, she was afraid in a different way. not the fear of staying. The fear of leaving. The fear of not knowing where the road would end. The fear of hunger, darkness, shame, and danger. Yet even with all that fear, the night air felt freer than the air she had breathed in that house. Victoria ran into the darkness with trembling legs and a pounding heart, carrying only one bag, one photograph, and the last pieces of herself she had managed to save. And behind her, in the house that was no longer home, her name began to rise in angry voices. But she did not turn back. Victoria did not know how long she ran. The night was dark, and the road ahead looked endless. Her breath came fast. Her wrapper kept loosening around her waist. Her slippers slapped against the ground as she hurried forward, clutching her bag tightly to her chest. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she could not stop. Behind her, the voices in her uncle's house had risen sharply after they discovered she was gone. At first it was Auntie Beatrice shouting her name in anger. Then came the sound of doors opening and closing. Then Uncle Samson's voice. "Check the back, she cannot be far." Victoria had heard it clearly before she ran beyond the fence. Now, as she hurried down the lonely road, she could almost hear his next words in her head. He would not sit quietly. He would not sleep and wait for morning. He would send men after her. He would drag her back if he had to. And that was exactly what he did. Back at the house, Beatrice stood in the middle of the room, one hand on her chest, the other pointing toward the door. "She has disgraced us," she cried. "That girl has ruined everything." Uncle Samson's face was dark with rage. He grabbed his phone and began calling people. "She cannot leave this area," he said. "Find her. Bring her back. I do not care how." The old man they had invited to see her was already muttering in annoyance, saying he did not have time for drama. Samson kept apologizing to him, promising the girl would be found soon. Then he sent 3 men after her. One had a motorcycle. 2 went on foot through the smaller roads and shortcuts. Victoria knew the village well enough to know they would spread out, so she stopped running on the main road and cut into a narrower path, breathing hard, her heart pounding so wildly she thought it might tear through her chest. Her eyes were full of fear now, not tears, just fear. If they found her, they would not listen to anything she said. They would drag her back like an animal. She heard a shout behind her. "There. I saw her." Victoria did not turn. She ran harder. Branches scratched her arms as she passed. Her legs felt weak. Her breathing became rough and painful. She nearly slipped once, caught herself, then kept moving. Another shout rose behind her. "Victoria, stop there!" She knew that voice. One of the men who often sat drinking with her uncle outside the house. Her stomach twisted. She pushed forward again, but this time when she reached the road, she suddenly stopped. Someone was standing there. A man. Tall, broad, still. For one frightening second, she thought she had run straight into another danger. He stood under the weak roadside light like a wall that had learned how to breathe. He was a big man, about 29, with strong shoulders and a hard, heavy presence. He wore a dark t-shirt and faded jeans. His beard was low and rough. A thin scar ran across one side of his face. Another disappeared into the shadow near his neck. His face was not soft. Nothing about him looked gentle. He had the kind of body that made people step aside without argument. This was Patrick Okoro. Most people who saw Patrick for the first time felt the same thing Victoria felt now. Fear first, questions later. He looked like trouble. Like the kind of man people warned their daughters about. Like the kind of man who did not smile much, did not explain himself, and did not care whether others misunderstood him. Patrick was known around the area as the man who ran the small gaming lounge and internet cafe near the main junction. He spent most evenings there and often stayed late into the night, watching over the place, settling trouble before it grew, and speaking only when there was need. Nobody could ever fully tell what kind of life he had lived before that place. There were rumors, as there always were with quiet men who had scars and strength and no interest in pleasing people. Right now, he was holding a black nylon bag in one hand and looking straight at Victoria. She froze. The men behind her were getting closer. Patrick's eyes moved once over her face, then over the bag clutched to her chest, then to the road behind her. He did not ask questions immediately. He saw enough. Victoria's lips trembled. "Please," she said. Her voice came out broken. "Please help me." Patrick said nothing for 1 second. Then the men reached them. "There she is." One of them stepped forward. "Move aside. She's from our house." Patrick did not move. The man frowned. "Did you hear me?" Patrick's voice, when it came, was low and flat. "I heard you. She is our family matter." Victoria shook her head quickly and moved behind him. "No," she said. "Please. I do not want to go back." Patrick looked at her again. The terror in her face was too raw to fake. One of the men tried to push forward. "Madam, stop this nonsense and come." Patrick shifted only a little, but it was enough to block the path fully. "Did she say she wants to go with you?" he asked. The man hissed. "Who are you?" Patrick's eyes hardened. "That should be your last question tonight." The three men paused. Something in his tone made them careful. The one in front tried again. "Her uncle sent us. She ran from home," Patrick said, "and she says she is not going back." "That is not your business. It became my business when you started chasing a frightened girl on the road at night." The man looked annoyed now. "Brother, do not do this. We know how to handle our own." Patrick took one slow step forward. The man stopped speaking. "You have two choices," Patrick said. "Turn around and leave, or stand here and test your luck." His voice did not rise. That made it worse. Victoria stood behind him, shaking. The men exchanged looks. They knew Patrick by sight. Everybody did. Even those who gossiped about him still kept a careful distance when he was standing right in front of them. One of them muttered, "This matter is not over." Patrick replied, "Then come back when you are ready for it." The first man clicked his tongue, angry but unwilling to risk more. "Let us go." They backed away. Not proudly, not happily, but they backed away. Victoria watched them leave and felt her knees almost give way. For a few seconds she could not breathe properly. Patrick turned and looked at her. "You can stand straight now," he said. Victoria blinked. "They're gone." She let out a shaky breath. "Thank you." Patrick stared at her for a moment, then looked down the road again. "They may come back," he said. "Can you walk?" "Yes." "You sure?" She nodded quickly, though she was not sure at all. Patrick looked at the bag in his hand, then at her again. "Come." Victoria hesitated. He noticed. A corner of his mouth moved slightly, though it was not really a smile. "If I wanted to harm you, I would not have wasted time chasing those fools away." She said nothing. "Come," he repeated. "You can decide later whether I look like a kidnapper." That shocked a tiny, tired breath of laughter out of her before she could stop it. Patrick turned and started walking. Victoria followed, though carefully, still uncertain, still ready to run if she had to. They walked in silence for some minutes until they reached a small building with bright but uneven lights, old posters on the wall, and the noisy sound of a football game coming from inside. A signboard hung above it, half lit. It was a small gaming lounge and internet cafe. Patrick pushed the door open. Immediately the smell hit her. Dust, wires, cheap air freshener, snacks, smoke, and the heavy closeness of a place filled with young men who spent too many hours indoors. A few heads turned at once. "Brother Pat? Who is that?" "Ah." Patrick stepped inside first. Victoria followed slowly. 3 young men sat near the game consoles. Another leaned back in a plastic chair with a cigarette between his fingers. A 5th was arguing with someone over a football game on one of the screens. The one with the cigarette looked up. "Who is she?" Patrick dropped the nylon bag on the counter. "Not your problem." The young man laughed. "Brother Pat brought a lady." Patrick's face did not change. "Put that cigarette out." The young man blinked. "Why?" Patrick looked at him. He quickly took the cigarette away from his mouth. "I said put it out." The young man obeyed at once. Another one stood up, grinning. "Brother Pat, what is going on?" Patrick spoke without looking at him. "Nothing is going on. She is staying here tonight." That brought silence. Then a few exchanged looks. The boldest among them, a slim young man with restless eyes and a football jersey, laughed under his breath. "So this is how it is?" This was Uche, one of Patrick's workers, and the one most likely to talk too much when he was comfortable. Patrick faced him. If you have extra strength, use it to mop the back corner. Ucha lifted both hands. I did not say anything. Good. Patrick looked around the room once. Nobody disturbs her. Nobody asks foolish questions. Nobody smokes inside tonight. There were murmurs, but no one argued. Patrick rarely spoke much, but when he did, people listened. Victoria stayed close to the door, still holding her bag, still unsure if she belonged inside. Patrick noticed. "Come here," he said. She moved slowly. He pointed toward a quieter corner near the back wall, away from most of the screens. There was a long wooden bench there, an old standing fan, and a small table stacked with empty cartons. "It is not a hotel," he said, "but it is safer than the road." Victoria nodded. "Sit." She sat carefully. Patrick pulled one of the cartons away with his foot, straightened the bench a little, then reached into a cupboard near the counter. He brought out a clean wrapper and a thin folded cover cloth. "This is all I have." Victoria looked at them. "They're clean," he added. "I know how you look at me." Her cheek warmed. "I did not." "You did." He handed them to her. "Use them." She took them quietly. "Thank you." Patrick nodded once, then dragged another chair closer to the front where he could see both the entrance and the corner where she sat. He settled into it like a man used to sleeping lightly and waking fast. Victoria watched him in silence. The young men were quieter now. Some returned to their game, some kept stealing glances at her. One started whispering, and Patrick did not even turn before saying, "If your mouth is too free, close the shop and go home." That ended the whispering. After a while he asked, "Have you eaten?" Victoria shook her head. Patrick looked toward the counter. "Ucha." Ucha stood up. "Yes." "Bring the bread. And the meat pie in the warmer." Ucha looked at Victoria, then back at Patrick, but wisely said nothing. He brought the food over. Patrick placed it on the table near her. "Eat." Victoria hesitated. "I am fine." Patrick leaned back in his chair. "No, you're not." She looked at the food again. "I am not hungry." He gave her a long look. "You ran half the night. You look like wind can carry you away. Eat." His tone was blunt, but not cruel. Victoria slowly picked up the bread. She ate little. Patrick noticed. "That's all? I cannot take more." He exhaled quietly and looked away. For some time, the room was filled only with the soft click of game buttons, low talking, and the sound of the fan turning its tired neck from side to side. Then Patrick asked, "What is your name?" Victoria looked up. "Victoria." He nodded. "Victoria what?" "Victoria Nwosu." The surname meant something to one of the boys nearby. He looked up. "Nwosu? From which house?" Patrick gave him one look. The boy quickly bent back to his game. Patrick returned his attention to her. "Those men, they were sent by your family?" Victoria nodded once. He asked no more. She was grateful for that. After some minutes, Ucha came near the counter again and lowered his voice. "Brother Pat." Patrick answered without turning. "What?" "That girl looks familiar." "I think I have heard that name before." Patrick said nothing. Ucha went on, softer now. "Maybe from that family that lost their father and mother some years back. The one people used to say were comfortable before trouble came." Patrick's face stayed still. "Go and lock the side door," he said. Ucha understood the warning and moved away. But the words remained in Patrick's mind. He looked once more at Victoria. Her face was tired but not empty. Her speech was soft and careful. Even in fear, there was something in the way she carried herself that did not match the life of the road. He could already tell she was educated. Her English was clean. Her fear was real, but it had not taken away her dignity. This was not just another girl running from ordinary trouble. Something had happened to her. Something bigger than she was ready to say. Patrick wanted to ask more. Who were those men really? Why had she run? Why did her own people seem ready to drag her back by force? But when he looked at her again, he saw that she was still the same. She was beautiful, but there was something about her. that made him feel like he was looking at a stranger. He couldn't help but wonder if she was hiding something from him. He saw her shoulders shaking slightly from exhaustion, though she was trying hard to hide it. So he said only, "You can sleep there for one night." Victoria looked up quickly. "No one will touch you here," he added. "Not while I'm around." She stared at him for a moment. This man still frightened her a little. His face was hard, his voice was rough, his body looked built for violence. Yet tonight, he had been the first safe thing she had found. "Thank you," she said again, more softly this time. Patrick gave a short nod. "Sleep." Victoria wrapped the cloth around herself and lay down carefully on the bench. It was not comfortable, but it was dry, quiet enough, and far better than the road. She kept her bag under her arm. Her eyes remained open for a while as she watched Patrick from where she lay. He sat in his chair near the entrance, one arm resting on the back, his eyes half on the room, half on the door, like a man who trusted sleep only a little. He looked frightening, but he had not taken advantage of her fear. He had not asked for anything. He had not even moved too close. Slowly, Victoria closed her eyes. For the first time since she escaped, her breathing began to settle. Before sleep finally carried her away, one last thought passed through her tired mind. Maybe he was not a bad man. Maybe life had just been hard on him too. At the front of the lounge, Patrick looked in her direction once more. Then he leaned back and said quietly to himself, "Tomorrow." He would ask questions tomorrow. If she was ready. Not tonight. Victoria woke to the sound of laughter. For one confused moment, she did not know where she was. Then she saw the game screens, the plastic chairs, the dusty fan, and the early morning light creeping through the glass door of the gaming lounge. She sat up slowly. 3 of the boys were already awake. One was sweeping. Another was arranging drinks in the small fridge. Ucha was leaning on the counter, grinning as if he had been waiting for this moment. Patrick was standing near the entrance, arms folded, 100 feet away, wearing a black t-shirt and dark trousers. His face looked as hard as it had the night before. He had probably been awake for a long time already. Ucha glanced from Victoria to Patrick and laughed. "Brother Pat," he said, "so this is how you spent the night?" Patrick did not answer. Another boy added, "The same man who shouts if we bring noise here is now keeping a lady in the shop." Ucha shook his head dramatically. "Love has humbled our boss." Patrick turned and looked at them. "Have you all finished the work I gave you?" That should have ended it. It did not. One of them said, "We are only saying you have changed." Patrick's eyes narrowed. "Should I help you remember who I am?" The boys laughed, but softer now. Victoria lowered her face. Her cheeks had gone warm. She hated being the reason people were talking. Patrick noticed. He pulled a chair back with his foot and said to her, "Sit properly." She was already sitting, but she understood what he meant. He was trying to stop her from shrinking into herself. He faced the boys again. "Any of you with too much energy can leave. I did not open this place for gossip." That ended it. The room became quiet. A few minutes later, Patrick went outside and came back with a nylon bag. He dropped it gently on the table in front of Victoria. "Eat first." She looked inside. Bread, boiled eggs, a small sachet of milk, a bottle of water. "You bought this?" she asked. Patrick pulled a chair and sat opposite her. "No, it fell from heaven." She almost smiled. "Eat," he repeated. Victoria picked up the bread and began slowly. She had not realized how hungry she was until the first bite entered her mouth. Patrick watched her for a moment, then looked away. She ate one slice, half an egg, then stopped. Patrick frowned. "That is all?" "I am full." "You call that full?" Victoria wiped her fingers carefully. "I cannot take more." He stared at her, irritated in that quiet way of his. "No wonder you are this thin." She looked down at herself, embarrassed. He pushed the bottle of water closer. "Drink." She obeyed. For a while they sat in silence. It was not a bad silence, just an awkward one. Then Patrick said, "You can go when you are ready." Victoria nodded. "I am grateful," she said, "for last night." He leaned back. "I heard you the first time. She hesitated. "I do not want trouble for you. You already brought the trouble." Her eyes widened. Then he added, "But I am still alive." That small, dry joke caught her off guard. He watched her face carefully, then said, "What happened?" Victoria became still. Patrick did not press. He only asked, "Those men, your people?" "Yes." "Your uncle?" She looked up sharply. "How did you know?" He shrugged. "Men who chase girls at night are usually not fathers." Victoria was quiet for a few seconds. Then she said, "I do not want to go back there." Patrick nodded once. "Fine." He waited, but she said nothing more. He could see she was holding the rest inside herself like something fragile and painful. So he asked a simpler question. "Do you have anywhere to go?" Victoria's fingers tightened around the bottle. "No." Patrick stood up. "Then think fast." She looked at him. "I cannot keep you in a gaming lounge forever," he said. "People here talk too much." That was true. Even now the boys were pretending not to listen. Victoria swallowed. "I have a little money." "How little?" "Not much." Patrick looked at her. "Enough for a room?" "I do not know. I will check." He gave a short nod. "Check." By mid-morning, Victoria left the lounge with her bag held close and her small savings hidden carefully inside her wrapper. Patrick did not stop her. He only told one of the boys to quietly find out if any cheap room nearby was available. Victoria went from compound to compound, asking carefully and receiving the usual hard looks that met a young woman alone. Most places were too expensive. Some owners asked too many questions, some simply said no. At last she found a tiny room in the same neighborhood behind an old unfinished building. It was little more than a weak structure of cracked walls, a rusty zinc roof, and a crooked door that looked as if one strong push could break it. The floor was rough. The single window was small. The ceiling had stains from old rain. It was clear the room had been standing on tired legs for too long. But it was cheap. Cheap enough for the little money she had. The woman renting it out said, "If you want comfort, go to a hotel. If you want shelter, pay." Victoria looked around the room again. It was poor. It was unsafe. It was lonely. But it was hers, if only for a short while. "I will take it," she said. By afternoon she had paid and moved in. She did not tell Patrick first. A part of her was ashamed. Another part of her simply did not want to become a burden. He had already done more than enough for a stranger. She could not start leaning on him as if he owed her a life. So she left the gaming lounge after thanking him again and only said she had found a place nearby. Patrick looked at her bag, then at her face. "Where?" "Just nearby." He waited. Victoria forced herself to smile lightly. "It is enough." Patrick did not like the answer, but he let her go. It was only later, when Uche came back from buying recharge cards and mentioned the exact building she had entered, that Patrick's face changed. "That place?" he asked. Uche nodded. "The back room." Patrick's jaw tightened. "That house is almost gone." Uche looked at him carefully. "Should I go and call her?" Patrick was already on his feet. Outside, the sky had started to darken. By evening, rain fell. At first it came lightly, almost gently. Then the wind rose. Then the rain grew hard. Victoria sat inside the little room and hugged herself. Water had already started dripping from one corner of the roof. The wind pushed against the weak door. The room smelled of damp wall and old dust. She had no proper lamp. No dry clothes except the one in her bag. No food. No real safety. She kept telling herself it was only for one night. She would think better in the morning. Then thunder cracked loudly above the roof. Victoria flinched. Another gust of wind pushed rain through the window opening. Soon her clothes were damp. Her wrapper clung to her skin. She moved to the far corner, but there was no real dry place left. The room suddenly felt less like shelter and more like a trap. She sat down on the bag and wrapped her arms around herself, fighting the urge to cry. She had escaped one cage only to land in another. Outside, footsteps splashed through the rain. Then someone banged hard on the door. Victoria's heart jumped into her throat. She stood up at once, terrified. "Who is there?" "It is me. Patrick." She rushed to the door and opened it. He stood there soaked from head to toe, rain running down his beard, his shirt clinging to his chest and arms. In one hand he held an umbrella, in the other, a small nylon bag. He looked into the room once, and his face hardened. "This is where you brought yourself?" Victoria could not answer. Rain was still blowing in behind him. He stepped inside and shut the door. The room seemed even smaller with him in it. Patrick looked around slowly. The leaking roof, the cracked wall, the wet floor, the weak door, the half-broken window. Then he looked at her. She was shivering. Her hair was wet. Her wrapper was wet. Her eyes were tired and frightened. His voice dropped. "You stayed here?" Victoria nodded. He exhaled through his nose, angry but not at her. "I did not know it would be this bad," she said quietly. He gave her a look that said she was not convincing anyone. Before he could reply, thunder rolled again and water dripped directly from the ceiling near the wall. Patrick looked up once, then back at her. "You cannot stay here tonight." Victoria shook her head quickly. "I will manage." "No. I paid for it. And the rain paid for the rest." She almost laughed, but her lips were trembling too much. Patrick looked at her soaked clothes and turned toward the door. "Wait here." She stared at him. "Where are you going? To get what you want, you have to give up something you need." Before she could stop him, he stepped back into the rain. Patrick went first to the nearest compound. No one had spare clothes. At the second compound, an old woman said she had none clean. Then he went to the Eze family house. That house belonged to Sandra Eze and her mother, Mama Rose Eze. Sandra was one of the girls people noticed the moment she entered a place. She was very popular in that neighborhood. She was fair-skinned, neatly dressed, proud of her looks, and even prouder of the small office job she had recently secured. She carried herself as if life owed her more than others. For some time she had quietly enjoyed the attention people claimed Patrick gave her, even though he had never said anything of the sort. Her mother, Mama Rose, was a woman who fed on gossip the way some people fed on tea. She always knew who entered which house, who spoke to whom, who smiled at who, and who should be ashamed of what. When Patrick knocked, Sandra herself opened the door. She blinked in surprise. "Patrick?" He stood in the rain and said, "I need dry clothes, a wrapper, anything clean." Sandra's brows rose at once. "For who?" Patrick said, "A lady." Sandra's face changed. Behind her, Mama Rose came closer. "What lady?" Patrick kept his tone flat. "She is cold. I need clothes." Sandra folded her arms. "You came here for another woman." Mama Rose clicked her tongue. "So the rumors are true." Patrick looked tired already. "Do you have the clothes or not?" Sandra gave a short laugh. "No." Mama Rose added, "If she is important, let her come and ask by herself." Patrick stared at them for a second. Then he said, "Fine." He turned and left. Sandra called after him, "Patrick!" He did not stop. At the next compound, a widow named Mama Ifeoma opened the door, listened quietly, and brought out 2 clean wrappers and an old blouse without making drama out of it. Patrick thanked her and headed back. When he returned, Victoria was sitting exactly where he left her, hugging herself tightly. He handed her the nylon bag. "Change." She opened it and looked up. "You found them?" "Yes." Her eyes softened. "Thank you." Patrick moved aside and faced the wall, quickly. After she changed into the dry wrapper and blouse, he handed her a small flask. "What is this?" "Ginger tea." "You bought it?" "I made it." Victoria looked at him in surprise. He avoided the look. "Drink before it gets cold." She drank. The warmth moved through her slowly. Patrick watched her for a second, then said, "You are coming with me." Victoria hesitated. He added, "This room will not survive the night." She looked around again. The truth was obvious now. "I do not want to trouble you. You already said that yesterday." She lowered her eyes. Patrick picked up her bag. "If you stay here, you will fall sick." "I may still fall sick, if at least not under a leaking roof." She had no answer. So when he opened the door and held the umbrella over both of them, she followed him. That night, Victoria entered Patrick's house for the first time. It was a small, plain place not far from the gaming lounge. Just a sitting room, A tiny kitchen corner, one proper room, and a bathroom outside the main room. Everything was simple, neat, quiet. Patrick placed her bag down and said, "You will sleep in the room." Victoria turned at once. "No." "Yes." "What about you?" "I have lived before tonight. I will survive one more night outside my bed." She stood awkwardly, not knowing what to do with her hands. Patrick noticed and gave her a strange look. "Why are you standing like I brought you here for sacrifice?" She blinked. He pointed toward the room. "Go inside." She took a few steps, then stopped. "Patrick." He looked at her. "Thank you." He made a face as if the words troubled him more than rain. "Sleep first," he said. "Thank me tomorrow if the roof does not fly away." She went into the room. It was small, but clean. There was a bed, a table, and a chair. Nothing fancy. Still, to Victoria, it felt too personal, too private. She turned back to him. "You're giving me your room?" "Yes." "And you?" "I told you. I will sleep outside." She hesitated. Patrick leaned on the doorframe. "Relax. I will not touch you." Victoria's face warmed instantly. "I did not say. You did not need to." His tone was teasing now, but his eyes were steady. "If I wanted to force anything," he said quietly, "I would not be standing here asking you to sleep." Victoria looked at him. There it was again. That strange thing about him. His words were always bold, sometimes shameless. But his actions never crossed the line. He stepped back from the door. "Lock it if it helps you rest." She nodded slowly. That night, Victoria slept in Patrick's bed while he lay on a mat outside the room like a man guarding something he did not want the world to touch. By morning, she was burning with fever. Patrick knew before she even opened her mouth. He stepped into the room with a tray and stopped. "You are sick." Victoria tried to sit up. "I am fine." He touched the back of her hand. "No, you are not." He went out at once and came back with food, water, and tablets. He had cooked soft noodles and boiled eggs. The smell made Victoria realize how weak she was. "I cannot eat much," she said. Patrick set the tray down. "You talk too much for someone with fever." She managed a faint smile. He watched that smile disappear as quickly as it came and said more softly, "Eat a little." She did. He gave her medicine after. Then he said, "You are not going back to that place." Victoria looked up. "I paid for it. And I am telling you that room is finished. I cannot just remain here." Patrick pulled a chair close and sat down. "Why not?" She stared at him. "Because..." She searched for the words. "Because this is your house." He shrugged. "And that dangerous room is your palace?" She wanted to argue, but her head hurt too much. Later, when she tried to stand and nearly fell, Patrick caught her at once. Her hand gripped his arm. He said, "See? I can walk. You nearly greeted the floor. I am strong." He bent before she could protest and lifted her into his arms. Victoria gasped. "Patrick!" He carried her out of the room as if she were a piece of furniture. She weighed nothing. "Put me down." "No. I can walk. When your legs stop shaking, I will consider it." She looked up at him in disbelief. His face remained serious, but she could see the quiet stubbornness there. He set her gently on the chair near the small table. Victoria did not speak for a moment. Her throat felt tight. Nobody had carried her like that since her father. Patrick noticed her silence. "What?" he asked. She shook her head. "Nothing." He sat opposite her. "Good." After a while, he said, "I am your neighbor now." Victoria looked at him. He went on. "Neighbors should help each other." Something in the simple way he said it touched her deeply. Not pity, not pride, just help. She looked down at her hands. "Thank you." He did not answer this time. He only watched to make sure she took the rest of her food. When she had eaten a little more, he asked, "What did you study?" Victoria looked up, surprised by the question. "Education," she said, "but I also draw." Patrick nodded. "You went to school?" "Yes." "You sound like it." A small silence passed. Then she said, I was in my second year before everything became difficult. Patrick did not ask for all the details yet. He only said, "And this drawing, you are good at it." Victoria hesitated. "I think so." "Think so?" She looked away. "I used to be better before life became—" She did not finish. Patrick leaned back in his chair. "Do not talk as if you are finished." Victoria blinked. He went on, "You went to school. You have talent. You are alive. So do not sit there and talk as if life has closed its shop." His words were plain, but they landed where they needed to. Victoria looked at him quietly. He added, "And stop thinking less of yourself." For a long moment she said nothing. Then, very softly, she replied, "I am trying." Patrick nodded once. "Try harder." It should have sounded harsh. But somehow, coming from him, it sounded like hope. The fever went down by the next day, but Patrick still did not let Victoria go anywhere alone.
Thank you for being here.
By late morning, he stood outside his house with 2 workmen beside him and a serious look on his face. Victoria came out slowly. "What is happening?" Patrick looked at her. "We are going to check that room you rented." "You do not have to." "I know. But you are still doing it." "Yes." The 2 workmen exchanged a quick look and said nothing. Victoria followed them quietly. When they reached the little room behind the unfinished building, the sight alone was enough to make her uneasy again. In daylight, it looked even worse. The zinc roof was bent in one corner. The wall had long cracks running down it. The window frame leaned badly. One of the workmen clicked his tongue. "This place should not be standing," he said. The other man bent to look at the foundation. "Even the ground has shifted." Victoria wrapped her hands together. Patrick said, "Go in and check properly." The men stepped inside carefully. One touched the wall. The other looked up at the roof and took 2 slow steps deeper into the room. Then it happened. There was a sharp cracking sound. Victoria jumped. One of the men shouted, "Come out!" A part of the ceiling gave way first. Then one side of the weak wall broke with a terrible sound. Dust rose into the air as old wood and pieces of block fell inward. The men rushed out just in time, coughing and waving dust from their faces. Victoria stood frozen. In less than a minute, the little room was half gone. Not flat on the ground, but broken enough that nobody could live there again. Her mouth fell open. "Oh God." Patrick stepped in front of her in case more pieces fell. The owner of the building, a sharp-faced woman named Madame Bisi, came running from the front compound. "What is this?" she screamed. "What have you people done to my house?" Victoria turned to her at once. "Your house was already weak." Madame Bisi pointed at her angrily. "No, you did something. You must have done something inside that room." Victoria stared at her. "What could I have done?" "I do not know," the woman snapped. "Maybe you leaned something against the wall. Maybe you spoiled the foundation. Maybe you brought bad luck. The room did not fall before you entered." Victoria was too shocked to reply. One of the workmen said, "Madam, this room has been dying for years." Madame Bisi ignored him and faced Victoria again. "You will not blame me for this. You rented it. If it fell under your care." Victoria looked hurt now. "I only stayed there one night." "And now it has collapsed," Madame Bisi said coldly. "That is your own problem." Patrick's face became hard. "She paid you," he said. Madame Bisi folded her arms. "And? Did I ask the house to fall? It was unsafe. She should have known that before paying." Victoria's eyes burned. She had so little already, and now even this woman was looking for a way to push everything onto her. Patrick looked once at the broken room, then at Victoria, then back at the owner. "Fine," he said. Madame Bisi frowned. "Fine?" Patrick nodded. "You do not want to take responsibility. Keep that to yourself." He turned to Victoria. "I will rebuild it." Victoria blinked. "What?" Patrick repeated it calmly. "I will pay and rebuild it." She stared at him as if she had not heard properly. "Patrick, no." "Yes. No, you cannot do that." He gave her a flat look. "I did not ask permission." Her voice dropped. "You barely have enough for yourself." The words came out before she could stop them. She looked at his simple clothes, his small house, his gaming lounge. In her mind, he was still a struggling man doing his best with what little he had. "You are already helping me too much," she said. "You are managing your own life. I cannot sit and watch you use your savings on me." Patrick said nothing for a moment. Then he asked, "So what will you do?" Victoria lifted her chin, though her eyes were already wet. "I will start looking for a job immediately." "And sleep where?" She had no answer. He continued, "Search for a job if you want, that is fine, but you need somewhere to stay first." Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it again. Patrick looked at the half-fallen room. "You cannot stay here, that matter is finished." He turned back to her. "You will stay in my house properly for now." She shook her head almost at once. "No." "Yes." "Patrick." He cut in before she could continue. "You are not sleeping in a broken room. You are not sleeping in the gaming lounge again, and you are not roaming around like someone with no place to stand." Victoria looked down. He noticed and softened his voice, though only a little. "If it makes you uncomfortable, pay me small rent later." She looked up. He went on, "When you get work, when you can stand on your feet, you can pay something. That way you will not feel like charity." The words settled deeply inside her. He was helping her, but he was also protecting her pride. Victoria's throat tightened. "That is not necessary," she said quietly. "It is to you." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Only temporarily. Patrick gave a small shrug. For now. That afternoon, Victoria moved into Patrick's house properly. He did not say much about it. He only cleared space for her things, shifted a few items around, and told her where things were kept. By evening, he left and came back with a nylon bag in one hand and two smaller bags under his arm. Victoria looked at them. "What is that?" "Things." He set them down on the table. She opened one bag and found soap, toothpaste, body cream, a towel, slippers, a comb, sanitary pads, and a few other small personal things. In another bag were two wrappers, a simple nightdress and underclothes carefully wrapped inside black nylon. Victoria looked up at him in surprise. "Patrick." He scratched the side of his beard lightly. "The soap came from the shop." She held up the towel. "And this?" "Work people gave it." "The slippers too?" "Yes." She stared at him. He looked away. Victoria knew he was lying. Not because he was good at lying, but because he was not. She lowered the things gently and said, "Do not spend your savings on me." Patrick leaned against the wall. "Who said it is savings? You are trying to make me comfortable. That sounds like a crime the way you say it." She almost smiled, but her eyes were soft with emotion. "I do not know how to repay you." He replied simply, "Then do not start counting yet." Victoria looked down at the things again. Gratitude and shyness sat side by side inside her chest. Outside, the neighborhood had already started talking. Nobody kept quiet for long where a man and woman were concerned. By the second day, Sandra had confirmed the rumors with her own eyes. She saw Victoria coming out of Patrick's house in one of the wrappers he had bought. That was enough. Sandra Eza stood by her mother's gate, lips tight, eyes hot with anger. She had always told herself Patrick would notice her properly one day. He was not rich enough to be her final dream, no. In her mind, the real rich men were somewhere else. Men she still hoped to reach one day. But Patrick was the most handsome man around. Tall, hard, quiet. The kind of man women looked at twice, even when they pretended not to. Sandra liked the idea of him wanting her. She liked the gossip that he secretly liked her. She liked knowing that if she ever chose him, he would be easy enough to control. In her private thoughts, Patrick was useful. Handsome enough to keep near. Not rich enough to disobey her too much. The kind of man she imagined would sit quietly while she did as she liked. So seeing another woman inside his house did not just anger her. It wounded her pride. She marched inside and found her mother, Mama Rose, peeling ground nuts. "Mummy?" Sandra said. "It is true." Mama Rose looked up at once. "What is true?" "That girl is staying with Patrick." Mama Rose dropped a groundnut shell. "Inside his house?" "Yes." Her mother hissed sharply. "I knew it." Sandra's face was dark. "Since when?" Mama Rose clicked her tongue. "Men are all the same." He was pretending to be quiet and decent. From that day, the talking grew worse. Women at the tap whispered when Victoria passed. Young men outside the shop laughed too loudly. Some said Patrick had finally brought a woman home. Some said they had always known there was something wrong with him. Old rumors rose again, uglier than before. People said Patrick had once gone to prison. People said he was dangerous. People said any man with that many scars could not be normal. Some women lowered their voices and said maybe he had never married because he was not complete as a man. Maybe he could not satisfy a woman. Maybe that was why he always walked around with that cold face and short temper. Victoria heard these things in pieces. At the well, at the roadside, even through windows left half open. Each time she remembered the night she first saw him on the road. The scars, the hard face, the silence. For a moment, the rumors troubled her. But when she looked at Patrick at home, she saw something else. She saw a man who always gave her space. A man who knocked before entering the room. A man who asked if she had eaten. A man who noticed when she was tired, even before she spoke. Whatever his story was, it did not match the dirty things people said. Still, Patrick explained nothing. He heard the talk, she knew he did. But he carried on as if people's mouths were too cheap to answer. Victoria began trying to help more around the house. She could not sit and watch him do everything. She was good in the kitchen. That part came naturally. The first proper meal she cooked for him was simple: rice, stew, and fried plantain. But Patrick ate quietly,
delicious,
and then looked
Victoria.
at her once and said, "You can cook." It was the first real compliment he had given her. Victoria smiled despite herself.
This is delicious.
But practical
Victoria.
housework was another matter. She was not clumsy exactly, but she was not used to managing a house from start to finish. She broke the handle of one old cup while washing. She nearly spoiled the kerosene stove by using it wrongly. She poured too much soap into a bucket and wasted half of it. One afternoon, she tried to fix a loose shelf and made it worse. By evening, after the third mistake in one day, Victoria sat on the low stool in the kitchen and burst into tears. Patrick walked in and stopped. What happened? Victoria quickly wiped her eyes, but the tears kept coming. Nothing. That is a lie. She looked down. I broke the plate. Patrick glanced at the cracked plate on the table. Then he looked back at her. So? Her voice shook. I cannot even do simple things properly. He said nothing. Victoria pressed her palms together. I can cook, yes, but the rest? I keep spoiling things. Washing, arranging, fixing. Everything. I'm supposed to be a woman. I cannot even do simple domestic work well. Patrick's face changed slightly. He came closer and leaned against the door. Who told you that being a woman means you must know everything? Victoria laughed bitterly through tears. That is what I have always heard. Patrick's voice stayed calm. Then they lied. She looked up slowly. He continued. There is nothing wrong with you because you cannot do everything. Victoria said nothing. A woman is not created only to cook, clean, and wash, he said. Those things are useful, yes, but they are not the whole of a person. His words entered her like light through a crack. She stared at him. Patrick added, and if you were truly mine, I would not let you stress yourself like this. The kitchen went quiet. Victoria's heartbeat changed. She swallowed. What did you mean? Patrick looked at her for one long second. Then he picked up the broken plate and said, I meant you should stop crying over a plate. He turned and walked out before she could ask again. Victoria sat there still, her tears drying slowly on her face. Those words stayed with her. If you were truly mine. He had said them so casually, yet not casually at all. And they had touched something deep in her because they were the complete opposite of everything her uncle used to say. Uncle Samson had taught her that a woman existed to serve. Patrick was saying a woman should not be crushed under service. That night, she looked at him differently. Not just as a protector. Not just as the man who rescued her. But as someone who understood pain and had chosen not to use strength to hurt. Later that evening, Victoria was arranging the things on the table when the bathroom door opened. She turned without thinking. Patrick came out with a towel around his neck, his hair damp, his chest and shoulders bare. Water still ran lightly down his skin. His body was strong and defined, the kind built by real work and years of carrying more than words. He looked even taller somehow, larger, more solid. Victoria froze. Her breath caught before she could stop it. For the first time, she did not just notice that he was handsome. She felt it. Not in the safe way she had admired him before. This time it was different, sharper, warmer. An unsettling thought entered her mind before she could block it. What would it feel like to kiss him? The thought shocked her so much she looked away at once. Her cheeks burned. Then her eyes caught something else. Scars. Not one or two, but several. Some ran across his shoulder. One marked his side. Another faded across his chest. They were old, healed, but impossible to ignore. Victoria looked back before she could help herself. Patrick noticed where her eyes had gone. He reached for his shirt at once. "I am sorry," she said quickly. "I was not trying to—" He gave a short shrug. People stare. Victoria hesitated. How did they happen? Patrick picked up the shirt but did not wear it. Not wear it yet. "Life," he said. She waited. He went on after a moment, his voice flatter now. "People see scars and decide who you are before you speak." Victoria looked at him quietly. "They think it means trouble," he added. "That it means you are bad." Her eyes moved over the marks again, not with fear, but with something softer. "Scars do not make someone evil," she said. Patrick looked at her. Victoria spoke gently. "Every scar has a story." For a few seconds he said nothing. Something in his face shifted, almost too small to notice. No one had ever said it to him like that. No judgment. No fear. Just truth. Patrick put the shirt over his shoulder, then looked away. But his voice came out quieter when he finally spoke. "Go and sleep, Victoria." She nodded, though her eyes stayed on him for 1 second longer. Then she turned and went into the room. Patrick remained standing there alone for some time after she left, the towel still around his neck, the words still in his chest. Every scar has a story. And for the first time in a long while, he felt the strange, dangerous ache of wanting someone to know his. The next morning, Victoria woke with Patrick's words still in her head. She lay still for a while, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the look on his face when she said it. He had gone quiet in a way she had not seen before, as if her words had touched somewhere he kept locked. When she came out, Patrick was already outside, speaking to someone near the gate. He looked up when he saw her. "You slept?" Victoria nodded. "Yes." He studied her face for a moment. "Good." That was all. But even that small word warmed her. Over the next few days, life inside the little house slowly settled into a new rhythm. Patrick left for the gaming lounge every morning and came back at different times, depending on how busy the place was. Victoria cooked when she could, cleaned what she could, and spent the rest of her time thinking about work, money, and what would happen next. She did not like staying idle. It made her feel weak. It made her feel like trouble. One afternoon, Patrick came home later than usual and dropped a small box on the table in front of her. Victoria looked at it. "What is this?" "Open it." She did. Inside was a simple phone. Not too expensive, not flashy, but new. Victoria looked up at once. "Patrick!" He was already pouring water into a cup as if it was nothing. "You need it." "No." "Yes. I cannot take this." Patrick drank from the cup. "You can." She stared at the phone again. "I told you not to keep spending on me." He shrugged. "This one is important." Victoria's voice softened. "Why would you buy me a phone?" Patrick looked at her as if the answer was obvious. "So you can call someone if you need to. So you can look for work. So if trouble comes, you do not stand outside shouting my name like a town crier." Despite herself, Victoria smiled. Still, she shook her head. "I do not know how to repay all this." Patrick leaned against the wall. "Victoria." She looked up. "When will you stop counting every small thing I do?" She had no answer. He pushed the box slightly closer to her. "Take it." Slowly, Victoria did. That evening, after charging the phone, she sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the screen for a long time. There was one number she still knew by heart. Lucy Adebayo. Victoria swallowed and called. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Then it connected. Hello? Victoria gripped the phone tighter. Lucy. There was a pause. Then Lucy's voice changed completely. Victoria? Victoria, where have you been? Victoria closed her eyes briefly. Lucy Adebayo had once been more than just work to her. She was a few years older, sharp-minded, fast-talking, and always dressed like someone who had 3 places to be at once. She worked as an editor for a small creative and publishing outfit that hired young illustrators and writers for children's content, short comics, and design work. Lucy had first noticed Victoria's sketches during a school project, and later started giving her small paid jobs. She was practical, kind in a blunt way, and not the sort of person who wasted words. Now she sounded angry. I've called your line for months, Lucy said. Months. You disappeared, deadlines passed. Clients kept asking for you. I thought something terrible happened. Victoria lowered her head. Something did happen. Lucy fell quiet for one moment. Then her voice softened. Talk to me. Victoria took a breath and told her enough to explain the silence. Not everything. Just enough. She told her about losing her parents, about moving into her uncle's house, about how things became worse, about how her phone was taken away, about how he said a woman's work was to cook and clean, not sit around drawing, about how every small part of her life had slowly been squeezed until she could hardly breathe. Lucy listened without interrupting. When Victoria finished, Lucy exhaled heavily. That man is wicked. Victoria said nothing. Lucy went on. And now? Where are you? Victoria hesitated. I am safe. With who? A friend. Lucy was silent for a second too long. Then she said very flatly, Victoria. Victoria almost laughed. It is not like that. It had better not be like that if you are still sounding this tired. Victoria's lips curved slightly. His name is Patrick. He helped me. Lucy was quiet again. Then she said, Fine. I will not ask too much for now. But listen to me carefully. You need to start drawing again. Victoria looked down at her fingers. I have not drawn properly in a long time. So start again. I do not even know where to begin. Lucy's voice became brisk now, the way it always did when work entered her mind. Begin anywhere. I have a new project. Simple emotional illustrations, human expressions, quiet scenes. Nothing too polished. The clients want warmth this time, not perfection. Victoria listened. Lucy continued. You were always good at faces, good at feeling. If you still have your hand, you still have your gift. Victoria's throat tightened a little. I am rusty. Then be rusty, Lucy said. Rust can be cleaned. Dead talent is harder. That made Victoria smile. Lucy heard it in her silence and pressed on. I am serious. Start sketching. I will send you a rough direction. Not too much pressure. Just begin. Victoria nodded before remembering Lucy could not see her. All right, she said softly. I will try. No, Lucy replied. Do it. The line ended a few minutes later, but Victoria kept holding the phone to her chest. It was the first real piece of her old life that had returned to her hands. That night, after Patrick slept, she brought out her sketchbook. It was worn at the edges, but still usable. She sat by the small table with a pencil in her hand and just listened to the quiet for a while. Her fingers felt awkward at first. Then memory returned. One line, then another. Soon the pencil was moving more freely. She sketched the table, the cup, the curtain, the shape of the lamp. The next day she drew again, and the next. At first she did not notice what she was doing, but slowly Patrick began appearing in the pages. Not fully at first, just a hand resting on the chair. The line of his jaw, the shape of his shoulders when he leaned against the wall, the tired look in his eyes when he returned late from work, the scar near his neck, the way he sat with his legs apart, one elbow on his knee, like a man who could never fully relax. Victoria did not mean to use him. He was simply there. And somehow, he had become the face her pencil understood best. One evening, she was deeply focused, sketching quickly before the image escaped her head, when a shadow fell across the page. She looked up sharply. Patrick was standing beside her. He looked from the sketchbook to her face, then back again. Victoria froze. On the page was Patrick. Not perfect, 100%, but unmistakably him. His head was turned slightly to the side, one hand resting on the chair, his expression quiet and unreadable. Patrick said nothing for a moment. Then he asked, "So this is what you do when I think you are resting?" Victoria closed the book halfway. "I was only drawing me." Her cheeks warmed. "I did not mean to." Patrick dragged a chair and sat down opposite her. "That sounds like another lie." She looked down. "It just happened." He stretched out his hand. "Let me see." Victoria hesitated. Patrick lifted a brow. "Should I fight you for your own book?" Slowly, she handed it over. He flipped through the pages. Victoria wanted the floor to open and swallow her whole. There was his hand, his face, his back. Even one quick, rough sketch of him half asleep in the chair outside the room. Patrick stopped at that one. Then he looked at her. "You were watching me sleep?" Victoria almost choked. "No." He tapped the page. "This looks like a man sleeping. I only saw it by mistake." "By mistake," he repeated. She wished the chair would break under her and end the embarrassment. Patrick kept turning pages. The teasing look in his eyes grew more obvious. "So this one is my hand?" Victoria said nothing. "This one is my neck." She stayed quiet. "This one," he said, holding up page slightly, "is clearly my face." "Victoria, should I be worried?" She finally looked up. "You enjoy this too much." He gave a short smile. "Maybe." Her face was hot now. Patrick closed the book gently and gave it back. "You draw well." The teasing left his voice when he said it. Victoria held the sketchbook to herself. "Thank you." Patrick kept watching her. "Better than well." She looked away. "Lucy said I used to be good at faces." "Lucy?" "My editor friend." She wants me to work again." "That is good." Victoria nodded. "Yes." Patrick leaned back in the chair. "And when you need a model, you should at least tell the man first." She blinked at him. He added completely shamelessly that he was a member of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. "I might have removed my shirt for you." "Patrick!" He laughed then. Not loudly, but enough. Victoria could not help it. She laughed too. It came out suddenly, naturally, before she could hide it. Patrick looked at her in a quiet way after that. He had been seeing her smile more these days, but her laughter still did something strange to him. It made the whole room feel lighter. After that evening, something between them shifted again. The teasing grew easier. Patrick now enjoyed catching her off guard. If she looked at him too long, he asked, "What now? Another sketch?" If she looked away too quickly, he said, "You have already seen the face. Why are you pretending?" If she hid the sketchbook when he entered, he would say, "So there are more secret drawings of me?" Victoria blushed too easily, and Patrick seemed to take personal joy in it. But he was not cruel with it, just playful. And in that playfulness, their closeness deepened. Victoria laughed more now. She waited for his steps outside before evening. She noticed when he was tired. She knew the sound of his voice before he entered. One night after supper, Patrick sat with his back against the wall while Victoria packed away the plates. He watched her quietly for so long that she finally turned. "What?" Patrick did not answer immediately. Then he said, "I like you." Victoria went still. The plate in her hand almost slipped. Patrick's eyes stayed on her face. "I know," he said, "that you are not a foolish woman, so I will not talk in circles." Victoria slowly set the plate down. He stood up then, not moving too close, but close enough that the air changed. "I like you more than a friend," he said, "much more." Victoria's lips parted, but no words came. Patrick continued, his voice steady. "I do not play with women. I do not follow one today and another tomorrow. When I choose fully." Victoria lowered her eyes for a moment. "Patrick." He waited. She looked up again, and he saw fear there. Not rejection, just fear. "My life is not stable," she said quietly. "I do not even know what tomorrow looks like. My uncle may still be looking for me. I do not know when trouble will come again. I am still trying to stand. Patrick listened without interrupting. Victoria went on. I cannot step into something serious when everything around me still feels unsettled. Patrick nodded once. All right. She blinked. All right? Yes. He leaned one shoulder against the wall. I said what is in my heart. I did not say you must answer tonight. Victoria stared at him. Patrick's voice softened, though only slightly. Take your time. Live normally. Work. Breathe. Think. Even without your answer, I will still care for you sincerely. Her throat tightened. She had never known a man could speak so directly and yet not force the moment. No pressure. No guilt. No anger. Just steadiness. That touched her more than anything else. Victoria looked away because her eyes had become too full. Patrick noticed, but he did not call attention to it. He only added, Do not fear me because I said the truth. Victoria shook her head slowly. I do not fear you. But she did fear something. Not him. The depth of what he made her feel. Because deep down she already knew she was not untouched by him. Patrick straightened and said, Good. Then after a pause he added, But let me warn you. Victoria looked up again. I am still allowed to be jealous. That startled a laugh out of her. Jealous of what? Patrick folded his arms. Drawings, editors, future employers, any man who smiles too much around you. Even that sketchbook may soon need my permission. Victoria shook her head, smiling now. You are not serious. I am very serious. No, you are not. Patrick stepped closer by one small pace. Victoria, I am already jealous of Lucy. Her eyes widened. You have never even seen Lucy. That makes it worse. She laughed again, and Patrick felt that quiet satisfaction he always felt when he made her do it. There was softness in him now that he no longer bothered to hide from her. She could see it clearly, in the way he watched her, in the way he noticed everything, in the way his rough words always carried care inside them. And slowly, frighteningly, warmly, Victoria realized she was falling for him too. She did not say it. Not yet. But that night, when she lay down to sleep, his confession stayed with her. Not like pressure, like shelter. And for the first time in a very long while, the thought of tomorrow did not feel like something to fear completely. The morning after Patrick spoke his heart, Victoria woke up restless. She had slept, but not deeply. His words had stayed with her all night. I like you more than a friend. Take your time. I will still care for you sincerely. No man had ever spoken to her that way before. Not with pressure, not with sweet lies, just plain truth. She sat outside with the phone in her hand, scrolling through messages Lucy had sent during the night. One of them caught her eye. Urgent. Community art teacher needed. Basic teaching ability. Good drawing skill. Certificate helpful but not strict. Victoria read it twice. Then a third time. Her heart began to beat faster. Patrick came out tying the cord of his trousers. He looked at her face and knew at once something had changed. What is it? Victoria turned the screen toward him. Lucy sent this. He took the phone, read the message, and gave it back. You can do it. Victoria looked down. I do not know. You draw better than most people. That is not the only thing they will look at. Patrick pulled out the chair beside her and sat down. Do you want the job? Victoria nodded slowly. Yes. Then apply. She looked at him. Patrick kept his voice simple. Do not reject yourself before they even see you. Victoria gave a faint smile. You always talk like everything is easy? No, he said. I just do not like fear making decisions. Those words stayed with her. That day, Lucy helped her prepare from a distance. She sent sample questions, reminded her how to present her sketches, and told her not to sound apologetic about her own talent. Patrick took the matter more seriously than he pretended to. He acted casual, but Victoria noticed everything. He asked what time the interview was. He made sure the phone was charged. He checked whether the file holding her sketches was clean. That night, he even asked Uche to print out a few of Victoria's scanned drawings from the cafe computer. When Victoria saw them, She looked at him. You did this? Patrick shrugged. Paper speaks better than stories. The next morning, she woke to the smell of food. Patrick was in the small kitchen area, turning egg on a frying pan with the concentration of a man handling village politics. Victoria stood in the doorway. You are cooking? Without looking back, he said, Do not sound too shocked. She smiled. I am. He placed the egg on a plate beside bread and tea. Eat. You did not have to. I know. She sat down. Patrick brought the plate to her like it was the most normal thing in the world. Victoria looked up at him. Why are you acting like this interview is your own? He leaned one shoulder against the wall. Maybe because you look like you will faint before getting there. She gave him a weak look. I am serious. So am I. His face softened a little. This matters to you, he said. That is enough. Victoria looked down at the tea. For a moment, emotion rose inside her so quickly that she could not speak. Patrick noticed and stepped away before she had to hide it. Finish eating, he said. Then go and show them what you can do. Before she left, he walked her to the gate. Victoria clutched the folder of sketches to her chest. What if I fail? Patrick looked at her for one quiet second. Then you come back, he said. And we look again. That simple answer steadied her more than a long speech would have done. The interview was held in a modest private learning center with painted walls and a faded signboard. The position was for an art teaching assistant for children. Victoria sat among the other applicants with her file in her lap and her stomach tight. Most of the others looked more confident than she felt. But when her turn came, something changed. Once she began speaking about drawing, lines, color, and teaching children how to feel free with their hands, she stopped shaking so much. When they asked her to sketch on the spot, she did. When they asked how she would guide children, she did, she answered honestly. By the time she left, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. Real hope. She walked back more lightly than she had left. Patrick was at the gaming lounge, pretending to focus on a football match on one of the screens. But he looked up the second she appeared. Uche saw it and smirked. Brother Pat has looked at the door 20 times, he muttered.
Victoria, you made it.
Patrick ignored
Hi,
him.
Patrick. The interview
Victoria
went well,
stepped
I
in.
think.
How did it
You
go?
weren't really watching
Patrick
the match.
asked, trying to sound careless and failing. Victoria smiled. I think I did well. Patrick nodded once, but relief passed through his face so clearly that even Uche laughed. See his face, Uche said, like somebody's husband waiting outside labor room. Patrick turned. Do you want to go home with all your teeth? Uche raised both hands and backed off. Victoria laughed. Patrick looked at her again. You did well? Yes. Good. That evening, Victoria sat outside his house with her chin on her knee, letting herself imagine a different future. A small salary, work she liked, a reason to stand on her own feet again. Maybe this was how her life would begin to return. But 2 days later, the call came. Victoria answered with shaking fingers. The woman on the line spoke politely, but the meaning was clear. The position had gone to someone else. Victoria listened in silence. Then the call ended. She remained sitting on the edge of the bed for a long time, phone still in her hand. Patrick found her that way when he came in. What happened? She looked up slowly. I did not get it. Patrick frowned. Why? They said they found someone more suitable. He watched her face. Victoria forced a small smile that did not stay. Maybe I was not good enough after all. Patrick's expression changed at once. It was not loud anger. It was worse. The quiet kind. Do not say that, he said. Victoria looked away. It is fine. No. She gave a tired laugh. You did not see their faces. Maybe they only encouraged me because I was there. Patrick came closer. Victoria. She looked up. Did you do well? Yes. Did they know it? She hesitated. I think so. He nodded slowly. Then this is not about whether you were good enough. Victoria said nothing. Patrick turned and reached for his phone. She blinked. What are you doing? Checking something. Within an hour, he knew more than Victoria did. The job had not gone to a stronger candidate. It had gone to Sandra. Sandra had never even been the better fit. But one of the school administrators was connected to a family friend of Mama Rose. The decision had been made before the interview ended. When Patrick heard that, his jaw tightened. The next morning, he told Victoria to get dressed. She looked at him. Why? We are going out. To where? You will see. He took her back to the learning center. Victoria's stomach turned the moment she recognized the gate. Patrick. Come. Inside, the same woman who had spoken politely on the phone looked up and froze slightly when she saw him. Patrick did not waste time. You rejected her because of qualifications, he said. So let us talk about qualifications. The woman shifted uneasily. Please lower your voice. Patrick did not raise it. I already know the position went to Sandra Eza. The woman's face changed. Victoria looked from one to the other, confused. Patrick continued. And I know the decision was made through connection, not merit. The woman tried to recover. We made the choice we thought best for the school. Patrick held her gaze. No, you made the choice that was convenient. There was a pause. Then a man from the inner office came out. He was older, formal looking, and clearly in charge. What is the issue here? Patrick turned to him. The issue is that this center posted an opening called candidates, wasted their time, then handed the position to a connected name before the process ended. The man frowned. Be careful what you are accusing us of. Patrick reached into his pocket and calmly placed a card on the table. Victoria could not see it clearly, but whatever was written there changed the man's face. Patrick's voice stayed level. Should I call the owner directly, or would you rather correct this yourselves? The older man looked at the card again, then at Patrick. A long silence passed. Finally, the woman who had called Victoria lowered her head and said, There were outside pressures. Victoria stared. The older man exhaled and rubbed his forehead. This should not have happened, he said. Patrick replied, But it did. A few more tense words followed, and the truth came out in plain form. Sandra had been favored. The explanation about Victoria's qualifications had only been an excuse. The older man turned to Victoria. I apologize. She stood very still. The apology did not erase the hurt, but hearing the truth helped. Patrick looked at her. Do you hear them? Victoria nodded once. As they walked out, her head was full. She turned to Patrick after they reached the road. How did you do that? Patrick kept walking. Do what? They admitted it. He shrugged. People talk too confidently until they meet someone who knows better. Victoria studied him. This was the first time she felt it clearly. Patrick was not just some struggling man managing a small gaming lounge. There was more. Far more. Before she could ask more, trouble came from another direction. Sandra was waiting near the junction. Her face was hot with humiliation the moment she saw them together. So it is true, she said. Patrick did not stop walking. Sandra stepped in front of him. You used me. Patrick's eyes turned cold. Move. No. You have been leading me on, helping my family, doing things around the neighborhood, acting like you cared. Then you used this girl to embarrass me. Victoria stiffened. Patrick looked at Sandra with a kind of disbelief, then spoke in a flat voice. I never led you on. Sandra laughed bitterly. So all those times you helped us meant nothing? I helped your family because your mother asked for community support, Patrick said. That was all. Sandra stared at him. Patrick did not stop there. I never wanted you. The words fell hard in the open air. A few people nearby went quiet. Sandra's face changed. Patrick went on, and his voice remained calm enough to make it worse. The woman I like is someone else. Victoria's breath caught. Sandra heard it too. Everyone heard it. For 1 second, Sandra looked like she had been slapped in front of the whole street. Then she turned on Victoria with raw anger. So this is your plan? Patrick stepped slightly in front of Victoria. This has nothing to do with her, he said. Sandra's eyes were wet now, but pride held them back from tears. You will regret this. Patrick looked at her once. No, you will remember it. Sandra turned and walked away fast. That insult reached her mother before sunset. Mama Rose took it worse than Sandra did. Not because she had ever truly wanted her daughter to marry Patrick. In her mind, he was still too poor and too rough for that. But he had been useful, handsome, helpful, easy to send on errands when it suited them, easy to keep close as a loyal neighbor. Now that usefulness was gone, and they blamed Victoria for it. From that day, their gossip became poison. Mama Rose began telling people Victoria had entered the neighborhood and turned Patrick's head. Sandra muttered loudly whenever Victoria passed. Sometimes they stood near Patrick's fence just to throw words. Some women know how to enter a man's house and act innocent. Careful, before she will take your son too. A woman who appears from nowhere always carries something dirty behind her. Victoria heard those things and felt sick with guilt. One evening she said quietly to Patrick, "Maybe I should leave." Patrick, who was fixing a small loose hinge near the door, looked up sharply. "No. I am the reason this trouble is growing." He stood fully. "You are not the reason." Victoria looked away. "If I had not come here, they would still be proud, foolish people," Patrick said. "Do not carry blame that belongs to them." But Sandra and her mother did not stop. 2 days later, they came directly in front of Patrick's house, shouting loudly enough for everyone to hear. Mama Rose pointed at the door. "You think because one girl entered here, you can talk to my daughter anyhow?" Sandra added, "You deceived us." Patrick came out slowly. Victoria stood inside by the doorway, tense. Patrick looked from Sandra to Mama Rose and then beyond them at the gathering neighbors. "Finished?" Mama Rose scoffed. "You should be ashamed." Patrick's face did not change. Instead, he reached into the file in his hand and pulled out some papers. Then he looked at Sandra and her mother. "You should start packing." They both paused. Mama Rose frowned. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Patrick stepped forward and held up the documents. "The house you are staying in no longer belongs to the old landlord." Sandra's face tightened. "What?" Patrick's voice stayed calm. "I bought the property." Silence. Even Victoria forgot to breathe for a moment. Mama Rose laughed sharply. "You?" Patrick handed one paper toward the nearest neighbor, an older man who could read well. "Read it." The man took the document, adjusted it, and his eyes widened. "It is true," he said slowly. "Transfer papers. Signed." Mama Rose's face drained. Patrick looked back at them. "I bought it last week." Sandra stared. "Why?" Patrick's gaze moved briefly toward Victoria, then back to them. "So you can stop standing around this neighborhood disturbing her peace." People gasped softly. Mama Rose stepped back. "You are lying." Patrick took another paper out. "Here is the notice. You have time to leave. Do it quietly." Sandra shook her head. "How do you have money for this?" Patrick looked at her for a long second. Then he said, "The gaming lounge is not my whole life." That was all. But it changed everything. The neighbors began murmuring at once. So he had money. Real money. Enough to buy property quietly. Enough to make school administrators change their tone. Enough that people had clearly underestimated him for a long time. Victoria stood at the doorway, staring at him. Patrick turned slightly and saw the question in her face. He said only, "Some things came from my father. Some things I built myself. That is enough for now." He did not explain the rest. Not the scars. Not the rumors. Not the full shape of his life. But Victoria no longer saw him as a struggling man, barely surviving from one day to the next. There was a larger world behind him. A deeper history. Yet what moved her most was not the money. It was this. He had power. And he kept using it to protect. Not to oppress. Not to boast. Not to crush weaker people. That mattered to her more than any paper in his hand. Sandra and Mama Rose left in stunned silence that day, though not peacefully in their hearts. The neighborhood did not recover quickly from what they had seen. And that night, when Victoria sat beside Patrick in the small, quiet house, she looked at him differently again. Not with fear, not with confusion, but with the growing, dangerous certainty that the man beside her was becoming impossible not to love. After the matter with Sandra's house, the neighborhood never looked at Patrick the same way again. People still talked, but now they talked with caution. Victoria noticed it too. Before, they had mocked him as if he were just a rough man running a gaming lounge and struggling through life. Now people lowered their voices when his name came up. They still whispered about the scars. They still whispered about prison. They still whispered that no man stayed that guarded without carrying something dark behind him. And because Patrick refused to explain himself, those whispers stayed alive. Victoria tried not to let them trouble her. She truly tried. But over the next few days, small things began to gather inside her heart. A man came one afternoon looking for Patrick and stopped speaking the moment he saw her. Patrick received 2 strange phone calls outside the house and ended both quickly. One evening, Victoria found an old metal box under the table while sweeping. She did not open it fully, but she saw enough to freeze. Old hospital papers, 1 police report, and a photograph of Patrick looking much younger, thinner and harder, with a bandage around one shoulder and a look in his eyes that did not belong to peace. When Patrick came in and saw the box near her, something changed in his face immediately. He picked it up. Victoria stood still. "I did not mean to touch it." Patrick gave a short nod. "I know." Then he carried it inside without another word. That was what hurt. Not the box. Not even the silence. It was the way he shut the door on that part of himself, as if she was still standing outside it. That night she could not eat much. Patrick noticed. "You have barely touched your food. I am not hungry." He looked at her for a moment. "That is another lie." Victoria lowered her spoon. A quiet passed between them. Then she asked, "Why do you not trust me?" Patrick's eyes lifted slowly to her face. "Who said I do not trust you?" Victoria swallowed. "Because you keep hiding things." He leaned back in his chair. "Some things are not easy to talk about. I did not ask you for everything." "Then what are you asking?" She looked at him, and there was more hurt than anger in her voice now. "I am asking why you let me hear all these things from other people. They say prison. They say violence. They say things happened that made you this way. And each time you say nothing. You just leave me to wonder." Patrick's jaw shifted slightly. Victoria went on before she lost courage. "You say you care about me. You say you have chosen me in your heart. But when it comes to your own life, you close the door and leave me outside." Patrick's face remained still, but she knew she had touched something. "I am not asking because I want to judge you," she said softly. "I am asking because I am already inside this, whatever this is between us." He looked down briefly, then back at her. "Victoria." She shook her head. "No, let me finish." Her voice trembled now. "I know I came here with trouble. I know I came with nothing. I know you have done more for me than anyone else has. But sometimes it feels as if you want to protect me and keep me at a distance at the same time." Patrick stayed quiet. That silence broke her a little. She laughed bitterly under her breath and looked away. "I am sorry. Maybe I am speaking too much again." "Victoria." "I am sorry," she repeated. He stood up. She also stood, but only because the emotion inside her had become too much to sit with. "I should not have said it that way," she whispered. "I know you owe me nothing. I am sorry." Patrick's voice turned hard. "Stop saying sorry." Victoria looked up quickly. He stepped toward her once. "You apologize for breathing. You apologize for asking simple questions. You apologize for existing in your own feelings. Stop it." Her eyes filled at once. "I was only trying to..." "Victoria, I'm sorry, I am sorry, I am sorry. I just..." He crossed the distance between them so suddenly that she did not even understand what was happening until his hand reached her face and his mouth came down on hers. The kiss was not neat. It was not soft in the way she had secretly imagined in her quietest moments. It was rough, fast, emotional, and full of all the things both of them had been holding back too long. Victoria made a small startled sound against his mouth. Her hand caught his shirt. For a second, she did not even move. Then feeling rushed through her so hard that her knees almost weakened. Patrick kissed her like a man who had run out of patience with silence, like a man who had wanted her for too long, like a man who was trying in the only way he could manage in that moment to stop her from shrinking herself again. When he finally pulled back, both of them were breathing hard. Victoria stared at him, shaken. Her lips trembled. Her face was hot. Her heart was beating so wildly she could barely think. Patrick looked at her for 1 second, then swore under his breath and stepped back. "I'm sorry." She blinked. His voice was lower now, raw in a way she had never heard before. That was too much. Victoria could not speak. Patrick ran a hand over his beard, angry with himself now. "I should not have done it like that." She was still staring at him. "I am sorry," he said again, "but I will not lie and pretend I do not feel what I feel." That landed heavily between them. Patrick looked straight at her. "If you reject me, I will still belong to you in my heart." Victoria's breath caught. "I will never force you into anything," he said. "Not today, not ever. Do you hear me?" She nodded slowly. Patrick's voice softened just a little. "But do not stand in front of me, look at me like that, and keep apologizing as if your feelings are a burden. I cannot bear it." Victoria looked away because her eyes were too full now. She was angry at him, embarrassed, shaken, and yet beneath all of that, something else had become impossible to deny. She loved him. Maybe not with words yet, maybe not with courage yet, but the truth was already there. She could feel it in the place his kiss had touched open inside her. Patrick stepped back farther, giving her space. After a long silence, Victoria said quietly, "You always break through my walls too easily." A faint, tired smile touched one side of his mouth. "That is because your walls are not as strong as you think." She looked at him, half hurt, half wanting to smile too. Then she turned and went into the room before she could say something foolish. That night changed them. They did not become an official couple. Victoria still did not give him the clear answer he wanted. But something had moved.
This space is for you.
Something
always.
real. And Patrick, for all his roughness, became more careful after that kiss. Not colder, just more careful. He still teased her, still watched her too closely, still stood too near sometimes and left her flustered. But now there was a tenderness inside it that made her chest ache. A few days later, Patrick told Uche and two of the boys at the gaming lounge that he needed help. Uche looked up at once. "What kind of help?" Patrick said, "I am taking Victoria out." Uche's grin spread instantly. "Ah." Patrick ignored him. "I want everything arranged properly." "For what?" Patrick looked at him. Uche raised both hands. I know. Do not ask too much." By that evening, the whole place was moving. Patrick made 2 calls himself, and by the next day he had received a call from the police. A private evening slot had been arranged at one of the best cinemas nearby, a place far more beautiful than anything Victoria had seen in a long time. Patrick bought her a simple new dress without pretending it had come from work people this time. When she looked at it, he only said, "Wear it." Victoria touched the fabric carefully. "You planned something?" Patrick replied, "Maybe." That evening, when she came out dressed, Patrick forgot whatever he had been about to say. She was not dressed loudly, just simply, softly. But to him, she looked like peace in human form. Victoria noticed the way he was looking at her and immediately became shy. "What?" Patrick's voice came out lower. "Nothing. Just trying to remember how to breathe." She rolled up her eyes, though her cheeks were already warm. The drive there was quiet in the sweetest way. Victoria looked out the window, relaxed for the first time in what felt like forever. No uncle, no shouting neighbors, no fear pressing against every thought. Just this strange, difficult, protective man beside her, and the soft feeling that maybe life was finally giving her one calm evening without demanding pain in return. At the cinema, she stopped walking for a moment. The place was beautiful. Soft lights, clean floors, quiet music, a rich smell of butter and cool air. Victoria looked around, almost childlike in her surprise. Patrick watched her instead of the place. "Do you like it?" She turned to him with a smile so open that it nearly undid him. Yes. That one word made everything worth it. Inside the cinema hall, the room had been set in a way that made Victoria look around in surprise again. It was not crowded. In fact, it seemed as though the hall had been reserved only for them. On the seats were flowers. Soft lights glowed near the screen instead of full darkness. Victoria slowly turned to him. Patrick. He rubbed the back of his neck once, which told her he was more nervous than he wanted to appear. I wanted one evening, he said, that is not full of fear. Her eyes softened instantly. They sat. They talked. They laughed. For a while it was simple and sweet. Patrick bought her popcorn she barely touched because she was too happy to focus on food. He kept watching her in
This
that
is so
quiet,
much better than I
helpless way of
imagined.
his.
I'm glad.
At one
You
point she
deserve
laughed
this.
and said,
With you, I can
"If you
forget
keep
everything
staring at me
else.
like this,
That's all I
I will
want.
start charging you." Patrick replied, "Charge me. I will still look." Later, when the lights dimmed slightly and the music softened, Patrick turned toward her. It was time. Victoria felt it. He was about to ask for her answer. Her heart started to beat faster. She looked at him. He opened his mouth. Then she leaned slightly and whispered, "I need to use the restroom first." Patrick almost laughed from nerves. "Now?" Victoria smiled a little. "I will be back." He nodded. "Do not disappear." She stood. If only they had both known. Victoria stepped out and followed the quiet hallway toward the restroom. She had barely entered before a hand clamped over her mouth from behind. Her eyes flew wide. Another arm locked around her waist. She struggled instantly. A harsh whisper hit her ear. "Be quiet." Her heart slammed against her ribs. She tried to scream. The hand over her mouth pressed harder. Within seconds, she was dragged through the side service door, down a narrow passage she had not even noticed, and out toward the back of the building, where a vehicle was waiting. By the time Patrick began to feel that something was wrong, too much time had passed. He checked his phone. No message. He stood up. Went outside. Checked the women's restroom entrance from a distance. Waited one more minute. Then another. Something cold entered his chest. He asked one of the female attendants to check inside. She returned and said, "There is no one there." Patrick's world shifted. He went cold all over. "Check the cameras," he said. His voice was so sharp that the manager moved at once. The footage showed it clearly enough. Victoria had gone toward the restroom. Then, minutes later, two people in staff jackets brought out someone half bent between them through the back service area. She had been taken. Patrick stared at the screen as if refusing to understand what his own eyes were seeing. Then calm left him. Completely. He turned and called Uche. "Bring the boys. Now." Uche heard something in his voice and did not ask stupid questions. Within minutes, Patrick had another name too. Sandra. Her phone signal had been traced close to the cinema shortly before Victoria disappeared. Patrick stood there with one hand braced against the table, breathing hard. The manager asked cautiously, "Should we call the police?" Patrick lifted his head. "We are calling everyone." Victoria woke to pain in her wrists and the smell of dust. She was lying on a mat inside a dark, half-abandoned building. Her head hurt. Her mouth was dry. When she tried to sit up, she heard laughter. Sandra stepped forward from the corner. Victoria's heart turned cold. Sandra's face was twisted with satisfaction and rage. "You should have left when I gave you signs." Victoria stared at her. "Why are you doing this?" Sandra laughed. "You took what was not yours." Victoria's voice shook. "Patrick was never yours." Sandra's face darkened immediately. One of the men nearby said, "Enough talking." Victoria looked around quickly. There were 3 men, Sandra, and one woman she did not know. Fear pressed down on her chest so heavily she could barely breathe. At the cinema, Patrick had already traced the vehicle through the road cameras his people could access faster than the police. Victoria's location narrowed to an isolated warehouse road outside the busy area. Uche and 2 other boys arrived, breathless. Uche took one look at Patrick's face and stopped smiling completely. "Brother Pat." Patrick turned to him. "I am going there." "We are coming." Patrick did not argue. By the time they reached the isolated building, police had also been alerted, but Patrick was too far gone to wait quietly. He heard Victoria's voice inside. That was enough. He pushed through the side entrance, and everything after that happened quickly. A man rushed him first. Patrick hit him so hard he crashed into an old chair. Another came from the side with a metal rod. Patrick blocked it, but pain flashed hard through his shoulder and back, and for 1 second Victoria saw his face twist in pain. Old pain. Deep pain. Not new. She screamed, "Patrick!" That one cry made him mad in a way Victoria had never seen before. He moved like a man who had forgotten his own body, like only one thing mattered: reaching her. The third man tried to drag Victoria up and use her as cover. Patrick crossed the space and dragged him away with such force that both of them crashed into the floor. Sandra began screaming. Police sirens sounded outside. One of the men tried to run and collided with officers entering from the rear. Within moments, it was over. Sandra was dragged out, shouting that Victoria had ruined her life. Victoria could barely stand. Patrick reached her and dropped to his knees in front of her. His hands shook as he untied her wrists. "Victoria." She looked at him, weak and dazed. "I am here," he said, though it sounded as if he was trying to convince himself too. The moment her hands came free, Victoria leaned into him. Patrick held her so tightly that she could barely breathe, but she did not complain. His body was trembling, not with rage now, with fear, real fear. At the hospital, Victoria was treated for shock, bruising, and exhaustion. She was weak but stable. Patrick was another matter. Only when the worst danger had passed did his body begin to betray him. A doctor checking his shoulder frowned and said, "This is not new." Patrick said nothing. The doctor pressed more carefully along his back and arm. These injuries did not begin tonight. They were already there. Old damage, poor healing. You should not have been fighting like that. Victoria, lying on the next bed behind a curtain, heard every word. She closed her eyes. So the pain she had seen in his face was not just from today. The doctor continued, "If you keep ignoring wounds like this, one day your body will ignore you back." Patrick gave a short, humorless laugh, noted. Later, when they were finally alone for a few minutes, Victoria looked at him across the small hospital room. He was sitting in a chair too close to her bed, one arm bandaged, his shoulder strapped, his face pale with exhaustion. For once, he did not look hard. He looked shaken. She said his name softly. "Patrick." He lifted his eyes. Victoria reached for his hand. He took it at once, almost desperately. For a long moment, he did not speak. Then he said very quietly, "I have faced danger before." Victoria listened. "I have been hurt before. I have seen ugly things. I have survived them." His fingers tightened around hers. "But when they took you..." He stopped, swallowed once, then forced the words out. "I was more afraid than I have ever been in my life." Victoria's eyes filled instantly. Patrick looked away, ashamed of how much he had shown. "I thought I would lose you." Her hand squeezed his. "I am still here," she whispered. He looked back at her. Victoria's voice trembled, but it stayed steady enough. "I am still here, Patrick." Something in his face broke open then. Not weakness, just truth. She had never seen love so exposed in a man before. Not said for effect. Not spoken to gain anything. Just laid down plainly, shaking and real. Victoria pulled his hand closer to her chest. For that moment, nothing else mattered. Not Sandra. Not rumors. Not secrets. Not even the answer she still had not given. Because this night had already said something bigger than words. He came for her. He risked his broken body for her. And when fear finally stripped all his walls away, the truth underneath was simple. He loved her. And now she knew that whatever stood between them before, it had changed forever. Patrick was discharged 3 days later. Victoria stayed close to him through all of it. She helped him sit up when his shoulder hurt. She reminded him to take his medicine when he tried to act strong. She watched the way he hid pain behind silence, and now that she knew what fear looked like in his eyes, she could no longer pretend that what stood between them was small. It was not small. It was real. When they got back to the house, Patrick sat down carefully and exhaled. Victoria stood near him for a moment, twisting her fingers together. Patrick looked up. "What is it?" Victoria sat across from him. For a few seconds she said nothing. Then she began. "After my parents died, Uncle Samson came like a good man." Patrick's face became still. "He told everybody he would take care of me. He said I was his brother's daughter and he would never let anything happen to me." Her voice shook, but she kept going. "At first I believed him. I was too broken to think properly." Patrick said nothing. He only listened. Victoria looked down at her hands. "He took me into his house. Then little by little he took everything else too." Patrick's jaw tightened. "My father's house, the land papers, bank documents, my school money, even my phone. He said all of it was for safekeeping at first." She laughed bitterly under her breath. Later he stopped pretending. "He told me a woman did not need books. He said my work was to cook, wash, and marry whoever he chose." Patrick's fingers curled slowly. Victoria went on, the words coming more freely now. "When I asked questions, I was told to stop asking questions," he shouted. "When I begged to go back to school, he insulted me. He told people I was unstable, that grief had affected my mind, that I said strange things and could not be trusted." Patrick looked up sharply. "He spread that lie?" he asked. Victoria nodded. "So if I cried for help, nobody would believe me. If I said he stole from me, people would think I was confused." Her eyes filled. "He wanted me silent, easy to control." Patrick's face had gone cold in a dangerous way now. Victoria swallowed and forced herself to continue. "He said I was a burden. He wanted me out of his house, but not empty-handed for him. That was why he tried to force me to marry that old man. He wanted the money. He wanted me gone." The room became very quiet. Patrick looked away for a moment, breathing slowly through his nose, fighting something dark inside himself. Then he looked back at her. "This matter will not end like this." Victoria's heart shifted. Patrick leaned forward, despite the pain in his shoulder. "We are going back for everything that belongs to you." She stared at him at once. "Patrick, I mean it." Fear rose in her chest just as quickly as hope. Her voice came out small. "I do not know if I can face them." "You will." She shook her head. "I never thought I would even survive leaving that place. Fighting them is different." Patrick stood up slowly. Victoria also stood, worried he was straining himself. He ignored the pain and came to stand in front of her. "You will not face them alone again," he said. His voice was quiet, but there was iron inside it. Victoria looked into his face and believed him. The next morning, Patrick made calls. Not careless calls, not angry calls. Serious calls. By noon, a lawyer had arrived at the courthouse, along with 2 plainclothes officers and Captain Bassi, the same police officer Patrick had spoken to briefly after Sandra's arrest. Victoria stood near the door, nervous in a way that made her palms cold. Patrick adjusted the bandage under his shirt and looked at her. "Ready?" She took a breath. "No." He nodded once. "Good, honest answer." She almost smiled. Then he held out his hand. Victoria looked at it and placed hers inside. "Now we go." The house her parents had left behind looked both familiar and strange when Victoria saw it again. The front gate was still there. The mango tree near the side wall was taller now. The cream paint had faded, but she still knew every corner before stepping in. Her chest hurt. So many memories rose at once that for a moment she could hardly breathe. Patrick tightened his hold on her hand just enough to steady her. The moment Uncle Samson saw them enter the compound, his face changed. At first, surprise, then fear, then anger. Auntie Beatrice came out behind him and stopped so suddenly she nearly missed her step. Victoria stood straight. For the first time, she was not standing before them as a frightened girl. She was standing there with truth behind her. Samson recovered first. "So you have the nerve to come back," he said. Patrick did not speak yet. Victoria looked at her uncle and felt something strange. Not love, not even hatred, just a tired kind of clarity. "This house is mine," she said. Samson laughed loudly, too loudly. "Your mind is still not correct. Did I not say it? See, she has returned to continue the madness. Beatrice clutched her wrapper and added, "After all we did for you, this is how you repay us." Victoria almost laughed at that, but the pain in her chest was too deep. Patrick stepped forward. "That performance will not help you." Samson looked at him. "And who are you to talk in my family matter?" Patrick replied calmly, "The man standing where you cannot push her again." The lawyer beside him opened a file. Samson's expression shifted. Beatrice tried another route immediately. She put her hand to her chest and sank onto the low step. "Oh God, my blood pressure. I cannot handle this stress." Patrick did not even look at her. Captain Bassi did. "Madam, save your strength," he said. "You may need it at the station." Samson's voice rose. "Station for what? This house is ours. The girl signed everything away." Victoria turned sharply. "That is a lie." Samson pointed at her. "You signed." Patrick looked at Victoria once. She understood. Her hands trembled, but she spoke. "No. He brought papers to me after my parents died. He said they were school forms and account documents. I refused to sign some. Some papers vanished. But the real ownership documents..." Her voice caught. Patrick's eyes stayed on her. "Where?" Victoria closed her eyes briefly, forcing herself to remember. Then it came back. "My mother showed me once," she whispered. "She said if anything ever happened, the most important originals were not kept in the open cupboard." Samson's face changed. Patrick noticed. Victoria looked toward the house. "In my parents' room, inside the wooden wardrobe, there is a hidden board under the bottom shelf." The lawyer turned at once. Patrick looked at Samson. "Move." Samson stepped in front of the doorway. "Nobody's entering that room." Captain Bassi nodded to the officers. They moved him aside. Beatrice began shouting that they were oppressing innocent people. Samson threatened court, community leaders, and heaven itself. None of it stopped anything. Victoria's legs felt weak as they entered her parents' room. The air inside still carried a faint smell of old wood and closed windows. The bed was gone. Some things were missing. But the wardrobe was there. Victoria knelt in front of it with shaking hands. Patrick lowered himself beside her despite the pain in his shoulder. "Show me." She touched the base panel. There. Patrick ran his fingers along the edge. A moment later, the loose board lifted. Inside was a wrapped file sealed in old polythene. Victoria stopped breathing. The lawyer took it carefully and opened it. Inside were original land papers, house ownership documents, and several signed
I never
records bearing her
thought they had
father's name,
erased
and
everything.
beneath that, a legal beneficiary instruction naming Victoria as sole heir. The lawyer turned one paper after another, then looked up. "These are valid." Outside, Samson's shouting had gone quiet. Patrick stood slowly and looked at the lawyer. "And the transfer," he claimed. The lawyer checked the comparison papers he had brought. His face hardened. "Forged." Captain Bassi stepped outside immediately. Samson backed away. No, that is not possible." Beatrice's blood pressure vanished instantly. Victoria walked out into the sitting room holding the file against her chest. Samson stared at her as if she had returned from the dead. Patrick's voice was flat when he spoke. "You stole from an orphan. You forged documents. You occupied what was not yours. You abused her and tried to sell her into marriage." Beatrice gasped. "Sell? That is a lie." Victoria looked at her. "It is the truth." Samson tried one last bluff. "This is family matter." Captain Bassi shook his head. "No. This is fraud, trespass, theft of inheritance, abuse, and attempted coercion." The officers stepped forward. Beatrice began crying loudly now. Samson struggled and shouted that Victoria was ungrateful, wicked, and possessed. Victoria stood and watched them. The words no longer entered her. For the first time, they had lost power. As the officers led them out, Samson turned one last time. "You think you have won?" Victoria met his eyes and answered quietly, "I have taken back what was mine." That ended it. When the gate finally closed behind the police vehicle, the compound became still. The silence that followed felt unreal. Victoria remained standing where she was. Then slowly she walked back into the house. Not as a visitor, not as a burden, not as a frightened girl, as the rightful owner. She stepped into the sitting room first. then the corridor,
I never thought they
then the
had
room that
erased
had once
everything.
belonged to her parents. When she entered it, everything inside her broke open. She sat on the edge of the old bed frame and began to cry.
I never thought they
small
had
tears.
erased everything.
Not silent ones. Deep, shaking tears that seemed to rise from every year she had lost. Patrick came in quietly and stopped near her. Victoria pressed the file to her chest. "I never thought," she whispered through tears. "I never thought I would come back like this. I thought they had erased everything." Patrick sat beside her as carefully as his injuries allowed. He drew her into his arms. Victoria leaned into him and cried harder. Patrick held her and said softly, "They did not erase them." "Your parents' memory is still here," he said. "This house is still here. You are still here." Victoria closed her eyes tightly. For a long while he just held her. When her crying eased a little, Patrick moved back enough to look at her face. There was something different in his own face too now. Not just tenderness. Decision. He reached into his pocket slowly. Victoria watched him through wet lashes. Patrick brought out a small ring box. Her breath caught. For 1 second, neither of them spoke. Then Patrick opened it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, and steady, like the man holding it. Victoria stared at it in disbelief. Patrick took a slow breath. "I have loved you for longer than I planned to admit," he said. Her lips trembled. Patrick went on. "You were not part of my plans." A small, watery laugh escaped her at that. He almost smiled too. "I came into that neighborhood because I wanted silence. I wanted air. I wanted to breathe like a normal human being again." Victoria looked at him fully now. And perhaps because there was no more reason to hide, Patrick finally opened the door she had been standing outside for so long. "I was not born rich," he said. "I grew up in a poor neighborhood, not too different from the one where you met me. I lost my parents early. I struggled through school. There were days I did not know how I would eat and still attend class." Victoria listened without blinking. "I was good with computers, better than most people around me. When I was 21, I built an app. I worked on it like my life depended on it because it did. The app sold for a lot of money, more than I had ever imagined. That one deal changed everything." He gave a small, humorless smile. "Overnight I was rich, then richer, then too rich to know who was truly seeing me and who was only seeing money." Victoria's eyes softened. Patrick looked away briefly, then back at her. "Women started following me. Friends changed, family changed. Business people smiled with one side of their mouth and calculated with the other. That was when I really learned how shallow people can be." He paused. "So I stepped away. Not forever, just enough to breathe. I left the noise, the parties, the fake people. I came to that small neighborhood because it still felt like the kind of place I grew up in. People knew each other, fought, laughed, borrowed salt, shouted, survived. I wanted that ordinary feeling again." Victoria thought of the gaming lounge, the old chair, the way he watched the street like a man trying to rest without fully sleeping. Patrick's voice dropped lower. "I did not expect to rescue you that night." He looked at her steadily. "And I did not expect to fall madly in love with you." Victoria's eyes filled again. Patrick continued. "You were never part of my plans, but you became the best thing that happened to me." He let the words settle before going on. "As for the scars," he glanced down once. "Some came from the struggle before money. Some came after it. One bad attack, one business betrayal that became violent. Men who thought money made me easy to break. I survived. I healed badly, and rumors did the rest. Some people said prison because there was police, court, reports, all of it. I stopped correcting people. I got tired." Victoria understood now. Not only the scars, the silence too. She reached out and touched his face lightly. "I understand." Patrick's eyes stayed on hers. "I do not want to build your life on secrets anymore," he said. "I want to build you a life where nobody will sell you, shame you, silence you, or make you apologize for existing again." Tears slipped down Victoria's cheeks, but she was smiling now. Patrick lifted the ring slightly. "So this is me asking you clearly." His voice turned quieter, rougher. "Choose me fully. Let me love you in the open. Let me stand with you for life." Victoria looked at him through tears and light and all the pain that had brought them here. There was no fear left now. Not the kind that made her run. Not the kind that made her hide. Only love. Simple and deep and undeniable. Yes, she whispered. Patrick did not move at first, as if he needed to hear it again. Victoria smiled through tears. Yes, Patrick. Still he watched her. She laughed softly, half crying. I am saying yes. That was when the breath left him. He slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that were steadier in danger than they were in joy. Then Victoria touched his face again and said the thing she had been carrying too long. I choose you fully too. Patrick closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, something in him looked quieter than before, not weaker. At peace. He kissed her then. Not like the first time. This time it was slower. Certain. A promise, not a storm. By evening, Patrick took Victoria to the place he had avoided showing her until now. His mansion. The drive there was long enough for Victoria to fall quiet with wonder. By the time they entered the gates, she could not hide her surprise. The house was grand without being loud. Wide steps, tall windows, carefully kept grounds. The kind of place built by wealth and maintained with taste. Victoria turned to him. Patrick gave a small shrug. I said there were things I had not told you. She shook her head with a smile. You truly enjoy shocking me, he replied, only when necessary. Inside, an older woman was waiting in the sitting room, seated upright with the calm authority of someone used to being respected. This was Patrick's grandmother. Her eyes moved first to Patrick, then to Victoria, then to their joined hands. A slow smile spread across her face. So, she said, this is the woman. Patrick's voice softened in a way Victoria had not heard before. Yes, Grandma. He looked at Victoria, then back at the woman who had loved him long before the world knew his name. I have found the woman I want for life. Victoria's heart swelled. His grandmother stood and came closer. She took Victoria's hands in both of hers, looked at the ring, and looked into her face with kind, knowing eyes. You are welcome, she said. Victoria felt tears gather again, but this time they were light. Not tears of grief, not tears of fear, tears of arrival. Patrick moved beside her and placed a hand at the small of her back. In that mansion, with peace settling around them at last, Victoria understood something fully. She had not only taken back her home, she had found one. And this time, it was built not on fear or shame, but on truth, choice, and a love that no longer needed to hide.